All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, up there in
New York City.
Fangraphs Jon Tayler. He's here. He's back in New York. He's not in Miami, not in Italy.
I was going to say, I don't have, unfortunately, no longer have the fun Miami backdrop behind me of literally a baseball game happening as we talk, but... You know, I'm sure everyone who watches this will make do. Just imagine behind me a bit. Just perpetually imagine behind me a baseball game. Maybe what I got to do is get one of those Zoom backgrounds that's just like, and there's just an old time baseball game playing in the background. Like it's not even current baseball. It's like a random game from like 1953, like the St. Louis Browns against what's another team that doesn't exist anymore?
Milwaukee Crackers.
No,
Atlanta Crackers.
That was the Negro League team, but I mean that'd be very cool if I could just get a random Negro League game broadcast behind me. But back in New York, back ready to talk about Major League Baseball on top of World Baseball Classic baseball, and I'm sure some college baseball will come up somehow. I noticed, speaking of the Angels, May, their closer is likely to be Carlos Estevez, formerly of the Rockies. But there is some talk that maybe that job will eventually, at some point this season, go to your favorite and mine, Ben Joyce, key of the 104-mile-an-hour fastball.
I told you, he was the one who, sure, Drew Gilbert, should he start opening day? Many are saying yes in the Houston organization, but Ben Joyce with his 105, 106 heater is just... You got to get him in there now. I don't know. I don't see that being a 5 to 7 year plan there.
No, and especially being the Angels,
just get him up there.
This will be the antithesis of K-Rod, where it's like, oh, this super youngster who has this long and, well, not even that long, but a fruitful career with us and helps us win a World Series. Yeah, this guy's going to save 28 games in a season, and then we're never going to hear from him again because every last individual part of his arm will have broken somehow.
Yeah, I hope that's not the case for my flame-throwing friend from Knoxville, Tennessee. But it's going to be fun. He's going to be electric. I can't wait for the first tweet to pop up of because on baseball Twitter, John, not everyone is familiar with Ben Joyce yet. And then it's going to be 11:30. You're going to be up and you're going to be scrolling and you're just going to see Jay Jaffe and company all just wait, what's going on in Anaheim?
I appreciate how much you've bought into the pitch clock that you think by 11:30 Eastern we're going to be in the late period of the West Coast games. And look, as someone who every day gets older and older, I would really appreciate and I think that's kind of what's nice about the pitch clock stuff happening now is that it happens for our cohort as we age into our 30s and 40s and beyond when we just can no longer stay up late. And so it's I would love to watch a West Coast game that is over before 1 a.m. That would be super to me. But
do you do morning baseball? Do you record stuff and then watch first thing in the morning?
No, if I don't see the game live, I don't bother, just because by that point, especially because since I'm an avid fantasy baseball player, so for the most part, I have, by the time I wake up when I wake up in the morning, my fantasy roster is usually one of the first things I check to see how the late games went. So, by the time I'm really awake enough to start processing full baseball, it's I know how those games ended. And unless there's some and that's the other thing. If there's some crazy performance, Mike Trout goes 3 for 4 with 2 home runs and throws out a runner as the Angels lose 7-3 to the Tigers, or whatever the full context of the Tungsten Armo Doyle tweet is. I can always just pull up the video anyway, which I think is the best way to consume some West Coast baseball. I mean, there's some teams like the Dodgers and, the Astros. Well, I guess the Astros aren't really that West Coast, but the Dodgers or the Giants or, maybe the Mariners will be there this year, where you want to get the full game because you want to get the full experience. And then there are other things where it's I am not sitting through a Rockies game. I am not going to do that unless I am physically present and they are paying me to be there, because I will say Coors Field is a terrific live baseball experience. It is a bar that happens to have a baseball team attached to it. It's really great, but I like that, for the West Coast stuff, just wake up in the morning. Part of this, too, is by the time I wake up in the morning, I've got Craig Calcaterra's morning wrap-up email that usually has all the scores and a quick blurb, and that'll just fill me in pretty nicely, too. Shout out
It's
also.
fantastic. Go subscribe to that. I read it every day. I'm a subscriber, and it's great.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm referencing and recommending Craig's newsletter, and I cannot for the life of me remember right now what it's called.
Cup of coffee.
Cup of coffee. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then also The Athletic has their very good daily sports newsletter that if there's a big baseball thing that happens overnight, like it will be in there, so I won't miss anything. Thankfully there either. But it's funny. It's called Cup of Coffee. I don't drink coffee anyway, but.
Yeah, you've told me you don't do anything in the morning, right? Like
No. I just get up, and it helps usually that I sleep late anyway. But I just get up and go about my day. I'm not a morning caffeine guy.
But you're not really a caffeine guy at all.
I mean, I'll drink the occasional Coke, but that's more because I like the taste of Coke than I do any need for caffeine.
I don't even know what I want to look. I'm terrified to wonder what my morning / early afternoon looks like if I haven't had any caffeine.
Look,
I
and
don't
I
anticipate it goes well.
I know that's the case for most people. I'm just weird in that regard, and also again, I benefit from the fact that I don't need to be up at the break of dawn. I don't need to be up for at 8 a.m. to commute into an office. I work from home every day.
Did you say wake up at the break of dawn and you said 8 a.m.?
No, no. There are people who wake up at dawn, and then there are also people who wake up at 8 a.m. In my mind, anything before 8 a.m. might as well just be one giant. Just horrible dawn. Like I don't function well that early in the morning, but the nice thing is I don't
you go to bed
be
usually.
Early. Ooh, it depends. Most times anywhere between like 11 and 1, but occasionally it goes later than that if I'm again like sometimes you got late night West Coast baseball or out off season. Sometimes you're just you're deep into a game or a video game of some kind, or you're just watching a movie, binging some TV, and you just let the clock run basically.
I'm a 5:50 a.m. person.
That is awful. That is absolutely awful. I cannot fathom being up that early unless I'm like getting arrested or something. Like,
no, that's a couple hours earlier. The sweet spot for that is like 1 to 3 is arresting hours. Is like maybe 2 to 4 is like prime arresting hours.
Okay,
like anyone on the road or doing anything out at 2 to 4 is probably doing something.
But it's just for me, it's just like you're not getting me out of bed that early unless like it is a life or death situation. Like,
well, once your body I acclimated pretty well to it, and like part of the reason I do it is like I watch a full game of something I wanted to watch the previous night. So like there's no distractions, and I'm not watching it dreary, like just falling asleep, Yeah. So I retain stuff. So if I'm watching Yankees Red Sox at 5:55 a.m. versus like the slog at 11:30 on the East Coast on the ESPN feed, guess what I can do? Keep fast forwarding and keep looking at stuff. Like I watch the Braves live or I'll watch Tennessee live, but like the stuff that like I don't have to see at that moment, I save for first thing in the morning, and I just take my notes and stuff. And I will tell you, John, the thing that I do for basketball, that I do for baseball too, is I pick a team for the week, and then I watch that team's games throughout the week along with the Braves. So always to get a feel for those. So that's what I do. So this year I'm excited to get a week. It's a good way to keep in touch of what everybody's doing, and obviously I read about what's going on with the other teams, but there's just not enough time, John. It's not like when we were in our early 20s and can just sit around watching games and reading blogs and all that fun.
Remember blogging?
Oh,
Pepperidge Farm remembers.
Yeah, blogging was the best. You're still blogging. Well, you're editing blogs.
I'm editing blogs.
The blog.
Yeah, like Dion Waiters said, the NBA should consider itself lucky I'm out here doing damn blogs, or whatever the headline of that just transcendent. What's the name of that? What was the name of Derek Jeter's athlete website?
Oh, Players Tribune.
Players Tribune, yeah. But
does he still own that?
I don't know. I think Jeets just spends his days just happily being a dad and like making goofy Instagram posts.
I was gonna say, I told you, Jeets has personality that he doesn't like to show.
He does not like to show it.
I think Jeets needs to show it. I'm a Jeets guy. I think Derek Jeter is a low-key quality hang.
I could see that so long as you kind of made peace with the fact that it was, like you said, it's going to be low-key. You're not going to get into any kind of craziness, and he's probably not going to be telling like wild stories where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe Derek Jeter. But like, it's probably like you have some nice wine or a good meal, you throw on some music, you smoke some cigars. It'd be like hanging out with a way less aggressive Michael Jordan, I think. Kind of a similar
I think he has more of a sense of humor than MJ. I don't think MJ has a sense of humor.
I think he has I think he has a sense of humor, but I think it's geared more toward humiliation humor and like just ripping on everyone around him.
He doesn't seem like that. Because Jeter did the other guys. Like you dick, I'm Derek Jeter. Like he has some level of humor in him. He understands. I don't know. I think there's a little bit more to tap into. I think A-Rod's cringe, and there's no getting away from that. Like book.
I don't want to hang out with A-Rod. That would just be the most like. Imagine being talked at about the equipment at a gym for like 2 hours, and that's what I imagine a conversation with A-Rod is like.
Who would you rather be stuck in an elevator with, John Smoltz or Alex Rodriguez? And the only conversation is modern baseball for 20 minutes.
What happened to that elevator for starters? At least like,
it's under repair, and you didn't know before you got in.
Oh, that's a really rough one. You know, it's funny. I've talked to Smoltz before years ago when in Sports Illustrated had a briefly lived baseball podcast. I hosted an episode once where I talked to Smoltz about, I don't even remember what, but it was only supposed to be like a 10-minute interview, but he went like 22 minutes because he just couldn't stop talking about something or another that he was very passionate about. I think it was protecting arm health for like young pitchers and whatnot. But I think he could at least bring more to the table in a conversation than A-Rod. I feel like A-Rod is just... I feel like 3 minutes into that conversation, you're just kind of staring at him going like, I don't know what else to ask. Like, you don't... like every answer is just nonsense, where you're just like kind of looking around and being like, what do I do here?
Yeah.
Like, again, how many times can you hear about, you know, which lean protein is best before you're just like, I don't care anymore, man. I just do not flat out care anymore.
That's fair. Smoltz will talk baseball. I think Smoltz is probably like one of those guys who's better to talk baseball one-on-one versus the broadcast and what he does in the broadcast. Some guys are just not.
Yeah, I can look like the times I've interacted with Smoltz, and I should say I've interacted with him again when I made my lone MLB Now appearance. Was that what the name of that show was? There is whatever, and he was one of the panelists that day, and so in the pre-production meeting, it was, you know, obviously just talking to him briefly, and it was perfectly fine, you know, nothing, you know, definitely didn't seem like a disagreeable type. I just think there's a tendency with Smoltz that he just kind of monologues, you know, he just kind of takes the conversation over and just goes and goes and goes, and you're just kind of sitting there being like, okay, but when do I get my turn here? Yeah. You know, where is the conversational aspect of this as opposed to, here's another thing I don't like about the current game.
Yeah. That's fair. Speaking of the current game, John, Japan won again.
Yes, Japan, three-time WBC champion.
What do you make of Japan and their victory over Team USA? And John, I think we have to ask this question. What if Shohei Ohtani came into Major League Baseball 4 years earlier than he did? Maybe 5? Is he on track to be the best Major League Baseball player of all time? Because I don't know if he'll have time to be in America. But he's starting to feel like it. Even the casuals are like, Shohei Ohtani is something else. Like, you're just seeing it. He's now like the WBC actually like exposed him to a lot more folks who are like, so what does this guy not do? Like,
and that's the reality. It's like he does everything. He had the hardest hit ball of the WBC, the hardest thrown ball of the WBC, the furthest hit home run of the WBC. He started. He made a relief appearance. He got down the first base line in like 4 seconds last night. Like, he can do everything. And I think it's interesting you bring that up because, you know, on the one hand, Ohtani's not old. He's only 28 years old, you know, and given his just incredible suite of athletic gifts, like he feels like one of those guys where it's like he might play this game until he just doesn't feel like it anymore. Like, there's no obvious kind of like, you know, there's nothing obvious where it's like, well, he's deficient in this one way or limited in this other capacity. And this isn't something where it's like, you know, with a guy like Hideki Matsui, where it was like, yeah, he could probably just keep hitting home runs forever, but at a certain point, his body's just going to break down and he can't be on the field anymore. Whereas with Ohtani, it's like, no, he's just supremely athletically talented. Plus, he's already blown out his elbow, so you don't have to worry about that again, theoretically. I do appreciate the point, too, made that, like, yes, yesterday, last night, and for the majority of this tournament, or at least the 2 games that Japan has played on U.S. soil, because I imagine most fans probably weren't able to watch the games that Japan played while in Japan, given the time zone given the time difference and everything. That is probably the biggest exposure most casual baseball fans have had to Shohei Ohtani outside of the All-Star game and the Home Run Derby he was in. Obviously, all the jokes have been made about how Ohtani and Mike Trout finally got to play in a game that actually mattered. And not only that, but got that wonderful, like, that moment that, like, if you had asked MLB's higher-ups, how would you like this World Baseball Classic to end? I think every last one of them would have said, Shohei Ohtani pitching to Mike Trout with the game on the line and the championship on the line. And then we got it, which is one of those moments that I hope we all remember just for how singularly cool and just historic it was. It's weird with Ohtani because on the one hand, like, he is just... He is one of one. He is not representative of anything but himself because he is, again, such a true athletic freak to be doing what he's doing, and not just doing what he's doing, but doing it at the highest level imaginable at all times. But I do think it says, to me, the fact that Ohtani is there just says a lot about how the levels of talent produced outside of the United States just keep getting higher and higher, because it's not just Ohtani on that Japan team. He is the star, obviously, and he was the tournament MVP. And, he's the most important player both to that team, and I think at this point the most important player in Major League Baseball. The guy that the entire league, with the exception of, I think, Aaron Judge is the only other real contender, the entire league should just basically focus on him and circle around him. But when it comes to Japan, it wasn't just Ohtani, it was Roki Sasaki, pitching against Mexico very well for the first at least 3 innings of that one, and pitching well throughout the tournament overall as a 21-year-old who only throws 100 miles an hour with a pinpoint splitter. It was Yoshi Yamamoto who came in relief of Sasaki against Mexico and was basically perfect for about 3 or so innings, and is also, by the way, a 2-time essentially Cy Young winner in Japan who will be here in the United States pitching in MLB sooner rather than later. It's Munetaka Murakami, the big third baseman who won the game against Mexico, who absolutely blasted a home run off Merrill Kelly. That I don't know. I was worried for a second when he hit. Is like, that is going to leave a hole in someone's sternum if they don't catch it properly. Like, and but even beyond those superstars, even beyond the guys where when you looked at Japan's roster before the series, and I'm somehow leaving out Yu Darvish out of all of this, you look at those names and you're like, oh, that's the reason these guys are going to be one of the favorites. And that was, to me, like, Japan was one of the favorites the entire way through. And I think I said last week that I expected Japan to win it. But it's not just guys like them. It's also guys like, some of the pitchers we saw last night, like Shosei Togo or Hiroto Takahashi, or the infielder first baseman Kazuma Okamoto, who hit that big home run to make it a 3-1 game that ended up being the difference in the ball game. Japan had a super deep roster full of guys who are full-on stars in NPB, not just role players, not just, guys who weren't good enough to come to the major leagues, stars. And I think there's something worth noting about that, too, that a foreign league like that can have stars that don't need to come to Major League Baseball to validate their careers or to set themselves apart. They can just be great over there, too. Like, the peak of baseball is MLB, but that doesn't mean that everyone has to aim for that particular summit, nor that baseball that isn't MLB is now somehow illegitimate in some way. And I think Japan pretty well proved. I mean, they have proven it before. They won the first WBC, they won the second WBC, they won this WBC. I think they've proven pretty conclusively over and over again that they are a premier baseball country, right there with the United States and the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico and all the other heavy hitters in the WBC. But also that, that the baseball they play there is just as legitimate as the baseball they play here, if not more so. One of the things I really enjoyed about watching Japan play was two of the guys on their roster in particular. The shortstop Sosuke Genda, who is all of 5'9" and 160 pounds, and I think that weight measurement was taken when he must have been wearing like 6 overcoats or something, because there's no way he even weighs that much. The dude is scrawny in the stick, but he's also, when he squared around to bunt, I believe it was against Mexico, he dropped a bunt that was just with 2 strikes. It was picture perfect, and the broadcast made a point of noting he had over 100 successful sacrifice bunts in NPB the season prior. That is a bonkers number. Like, obviously there's not a single major league player who's even come close to that number in a full season in, I think, maybe ever, but probably definitely not, at least in our recent lifetimes. That's not a part of baseball that still exists in Major League Baseball, is the sacrifice game. Similarly, the pinch runner who scored the winning run against Mexico, trailing Ohtani by all of 20 steps the entire way, Ukyo Shuto, another guy just, 6 foot tall, 165 pounds, the kind of body that MLB really doesn't have too many of, but not just a lightning fast runner, but also a textbook runner. If you rewatch Murakami's just booming double, or whatever it ended up being scored as, that scored Ohtani and Shuto, you can just see Shudo he reads the ball perfectly. He cuts the bases perfectly. It is just perfect. And it is just, a lot gets made out of Japan being like so fundamentally sound. And I think sometimes to a degree that comes off as paternalistic, if not outright racist, that, you know, that's how Japan is good at baseball. They're just really good at the fundamentals. And like, no, that's not true. Like you saw it with Sasaki and Ohtani and Murakami and can't leave out Masataka Yoshida, who was fantastic in the tournament as well. You know, these are just super talented, very gifted players. But there is also something to the fact that, like, yes, the style of baseball they play in Japan is more oriented toward a particular way. And that doesn't make it lesser than Major League Baseball. That doesn't make it lesser than American baseball. It's just different. And different in this case is good. Difference is great. Diversity is great. Differences here are great. Like the WBC, both Japan winning the WBC and this WBC in particular, just in its entire existence, is just such a great advertisement for how great the game is globally and just how great it is when you have all these different cultures, all these different groups, all these different styles coming together in one place and just showcasing it. You know, it is hard to imagine a better advertisement for baseball, not Major League Baseball, not capital B baseball, but baseball, just the plain old sport, than the WBC. You know, not just because of the format that obviously, you know, artificially, but still, you know, successfully changes the kind of slow grind of 162 games into the more kind of energetic, like, just just kind of, yeah, just the more energetic and more kind of anxiety-inducing, stressful, you know, whatever you want to call it. Like every game has an immense amount of impact because it is just a short tournament. You know, it's hard to go wrong with March Madness, but baseball. But especially when it's also March Madness, but baseball. But also look at all these different guys. Look at all these names you've never. How many casual fans, like you said, had seen Ohtani before last night or had really paid attention to him? How many casual fans knew anyone in that Japanese lineup or on that roster, with the exception of Yu Darvish? You know, how many fans watching USA Cuba knew any of those Cuban guys, with the exception of Moncada and Robert? You know, how many people watching Mexico Japan knew anyone involved in that team? Again, with the exception of the major league guys. Being able to see these guys, being able to see, like, it is just the best possible advertisement for baseball. And I think, for as much as there's all the clamor after the Edwin Diaz injury, and I'm sure that, you know, the Jose Altuve injury picked the pitch back up a little, that, you know, oh, it's a silly exhibition. Why are major league guys getting hurt in this? Don't, like, the season's more important. Go to hell if that's how you feel, quite honestly. Like, this matters, and you could tell how much this matters to everyone involved, and not just the play. Like, everyone's saying, oh, it matters to the guys in Japan and whatever because they don't have MLB. Look how much it mattered to American players who play MLB games every single day. Look how amped Trey Turner was, or Mike Trout, or Mookie Betts, or all these guys who, you know, who a lot of those guys have won World Series. They have won MVP awards. There are future Hall of Famers on that roster. Like, these are guys who have done everything possible within the sport and succeeded at every possible level of the sport. And even they're out there getting super hype like they're 16 years old again in a travel ball tournament.
Yeah.
Like, it matters. It clearly matters. It is important.
That's
and
kind
I
of
think
the closest feeling, right? Is a travel ball team.
Like, I think
that's the best way of describing it.
I think a lot of the American players, when asked, have said, this is the last time I've been able to do something like this, basically since I was doing travel ball and stuff like that. And it's true, because that goes away the second you become, you know, especially like if you're at a big high school program or if you join a big college program, that basically goes away until and unless you're in some kind of state tournament or you reach NCAA regionals or something. I guess for some of those guys, that was probably the first time they'd be able to do something similar to that since they were playing in college. Like, it just doesn't exist at the major league level. And I think what's so nice about the WBC is it shows not all baseball needs to be Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball is great. It is the best baseball on the planet, far and away, just thanks to the level of competition it has and the sheer staggering amount of money that gets poured into it. But it doesn't have to be the only way we experience baseball. And that's one of the things that makes me wish that the WBC were a more regular thing that happened more often. Like, it is so nice to get that break, especially when the only other option you get to watch is spring training baseball and watching, like, split squad lineups play B games against each other, you know, against teams where no one has a name on the back of their jersey and the entire bullpen is guys from single A. For all the carping about, like, oh, I've never heard of any of these players in WBC. Have you heard of even half the players on the spring training roster of your favorite team? Do you know any of those guys at all? Will the great majority of them ever have any significant impact at the major league level for the team you cheer for? Probably not.
Yeah.
So why not watch the stuff that's just fundamentally dramatic?
Just goes back to, why are you policing what other people like? Why are you policing what players should care about? Like,
Seriously.
that's not, like, why? These are not real things to get mad about. And then you get mad when they're honest about what they actually care about. And you're like, what? None of this is bad. And when Rob Manfred, noted man who is wrong about most things,
He's
is
very
like,
frequently
we
wrong.
want more star pitchers in this.
Yeah.
Like, Manfred's out here
man.
like, I want to improve and, like, lean more into this because this is clearly something that works.
And not only that, it has made Major League Baseball a ton of money. And
Yeah.
I got to say, Major League
And
Baseball's
just
gotten
natural exposure. I think it's just natural
but
exposure.
And that's the thing. That exposure is good for everyone. It is good for Major League Baseball. It is good for the countries participating, particularly the smaller ones that have an opportunity to grow the game at an even bigger level. And that in turn is again good for Major League Baseball. The more talent these countries produce, the better they get at the sport, the better the sport will be overall. Rising tide lifts all boats in this scenario. And
Altuve and Edwin Diaz, I think if you ask them right now, it's just, there's no regrets.
No,
and that
there are
can
no
happen
regrets
in
at
a
all.
in spring training game. I guess Edwin's a little bit different because he was celebrating, and you're not really celebrating a spring training game in that way. But like, you see how it was, and like guys are like, I think Lindor was like, he said something like he could not stop crying or something after that, and it was just. Yeah.
Not only would they regret nothing, I'm sure if you asked Diaz and Altuve today, would you take part in the next WBC if you're able to? They would both say yes, 100%, no, like absolutely not, no doubts. Like that's how much it means.
Have fun. I think the difference with what you saw, and even Ohtani's reaction and just everything he was doing, like his post game speech, like in the locker room, I think it was more of that was a passion project, and like your side passion project that you're really passionate about. And then you have your day job where you're like, it pays the bills, but it's just...
So basically, MLB is one for them and WBC is one for me, is how this all works out. But
yeah,
there are no, to me, like, yes, there are parts about the WBC that just don't work. I think the tiebreaker rules are just nonsense. They don't make any sense, and I really hope that's something they revisit going forward and just simplify way more. Like the stuff that happened with Pool A and all the weird permutations of like, well, the U.S. to advance out of Pool C needs to beat Colombia only by exactly this many runs, and it's like, that. What are we doing here? And like, I want there to be better, and some of this is just the impossible and an inevitable friction between national teams or national federations and Major League Baseball teams. Major League Baseball teams only want what's best for Major League Baseball for themselves. They don't care about the game beyond any of that. So for them, it's, there are always going to be attempts by them to limit, well, how many pitches can these guys throw? No, they can't throw. No, they can't pitch back to back. No, you can't start this guy more than 3 times in a 4-day set. Like whatever it happens to be. And like, I hope going forward that is something that can be worked out better, because I think that is probably one of the biggest impediments to the WBC being an even bigger, better experience. And I think another one too, and there's something that you can't really do anything about this because there's just no good time to do it, is just the scheduling of the WBC.
I was going to ask you, does it belong in July?
Look, if it were up to me, I think I've said before that the ideal all-star format in my mind is to ditch the all-star game entirely, a boring event that used to mean something, but in the age of, particularly now that interleague is permanent and that every team is now going to play every team, those matchups that used to be like, oh my god, we're never going to see this again, or we've never seen this before, no, we've seen them. If anything, now we've seen them all in the WBC on top of it. Like, in my mind, scrap the all-star game. You can keep the home run derby if you want to, but what better way to celebrate baseball, and not just Major League Baseball, but again, baseball in general, than by creating a week-long all-star tournament, essentially, featuring all of these guys, where again, you keep it that, like,
and don't worry that a lot of these guys don't play in Major League Baseball. That's not the point. Like, I would not stress something like that. Yeah.
Who cares? Yeah. You really don't think that a bunch of Japanese players, like NPB, wouldn't like basically bend over backwards to send guys every 2 or 3 years to the States to compete in this? Mm-hmm. Like, I understand, like, there's no ideal time to do it. March is when everyone's getting ready for the season. By the time the postseason's over, no one wants to play anymore, and I totally understand that, because at that point, guys are just wiped out, tired, and you're really running a risk for injury at that point. I think more so even than in March.
That's why the summer just feels right, where you just take a break. You take a breather, where the season, you've gotten a couple months into it, guys are warmed up, guys are ready, and it's like, all right, some guys are just going to go get a 2-week break, whatever, and then we just do that. If you have to move the season up a little bit so that you can fit all that in so the season doesn't end at a crazy date. I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's a right time, but I do think it snuck up on people this year.
I do, and I think the other complication beyond obviously it being, having to compete side by side with spring training is the fact that it's competing side by side with the NCAA tournament, with both of
Yeah.
them. And that's just tough. That is a tough draw when you have
Especially
essentially
when Tennessee's winning, and I'm having to do so much winning, John.
Is Tennessee in both tournaments or just the men's?
Both. They're in the Sweet. It's an everything school thing, John.
Okay, there you go. But like that's a tough thing to have to run up against. And like I think it obviously helps that the WBC doesn't happen every single year, so they don't have to figure that out every single year.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm pretty sure if you said we're going to go from 3 years between WBCs to 2 years, everyone would just say, okay, sure.
I would do that.
And I think that's the other thing is like I want to see the WBC more often. I think it should be a more regular thing. You know, I like the idea that there is some amount of time between them to give them an element of like, you know, the
So
winners.
you'll miss it.
You'll miss it, and also so that you do get those waves of talent that change over time.
Yeah.
One of the things I like about particularly international tournaments like the World Cup is it's not just the same guys every single time out. That would get pretty boring pretty fast. You know, every 4 years means you get a decent turnover in terms of here are some cool new young guys. Here are some guys who were young last time but have now become superstars. Here are the older guys. This is their like, you know, this is the built-in drama and kind of emotion of this is their last time here, you know? And I don't think that fits as much with the WBC. I don't think there were too many people being, you know, getting teary-eyed over this is Miguel Cabrera's last WBC, like, you know, the Lion in Winter kind of thing. But at the same time, like, I do like the idea of it being a more regular thing and being in our lives more often because it's good to, I think it's just good to remind people again, there is more to baseball than just MLB. It doesn't just have to be this. And I don't necessarily think that this translates, like Japan winning doesn't translate into NPB is now the best league in the world, nor do I think it's going to suddenly mean that millions of American fans are now getting up at 4:30 in the morning or whatever to watch, you know, Seibu take on the Tokyo Giants.
They were doing it at the start of the pandemic, though.
They were like, yeah, that's the thing. Like, and I think you saw that too with the pandemic. Like, even though, you know, at the time it's like I didn't know anything about KBO. Most fans didn't know anything about KBO or NPB for that matter. Like, it's still baseball at the end of the day.
People are going to watch it. It was
People
wild.
are going to watch it.
What a wild time. That was it. We were all just talking about KBO and The Last Dance.
It was great.
Yeah.
But I will say, just to close on WBC, I do think that with the way this tournament played out, even with the Diaz and Altuve injuries, but I think you're right, those would have, I mean, Gavin Lux blew out his ACL in a spring training game. You know, you are not immune from injuries because you happen to be in Florida or Arizona.
Yes.
I do think, though, that the way that this WBC played out, this staggering amount of fan interest, the way it all ended, I think pretty much guarantees that the WBC is here to stay. And not that I think it was in any real danger of being cut, particularly, again, with how much it has turned into a genuine revenue engine for Major League Baseball, which has done a fantastic job in both setting the WBC up and continuing to support and promote it all the way through. You know, it is too... I would like to think at this point it is something that too many parties want to keep around for it to go away at this point. The players like it. The league clearly likes it. The fans clearly like it. The only people who don't like it are MLB team owners. And that's the group I feel most comfortable saying they can go to hell. I don't give two shits what any of those old bastards want. Give us baseball. Give us good baseball, especially at a time of year when the baseball is miserable. You cannot tell me you'd rather watch a spring training game over a WBC game. If you watched this WBC and your takeaway was that wasn't as fun as spring training, you don't actually like baseball. You don't. You just straight up do not like baseball. You only like Major League Baseball, the brand, you know, with the little R, the registered trademark. That probably has a word, a name for it that I'm just not knowing. I guess a registered trademark. Yeah. But yeah, I think, you know, there's a tendency, I think, when people write about the WBC to have to insist on, no, we need to keep the WBC. You need to watch the WBC. We need to support it. I think this WBC is the turning point here. I think we're now past that point. I think we're now at the point where the WBC just becomes not just a regular part of a baseball fan's life, but a fun, exciting part that we all look forward to, that every 2 or 3 years or however, you know, whatever the time frame ends up being, we're sitting there going, boy, I can't wait to see what this team looks like. Like, imagine what the peer pressure is going to be on the good American pitchers. And no offense to Adam Wainwright or Merrill Kelly or Lance Lynn or whoever the hell else was on that roster, Miles Mikolas. Like, but we are not sending our best when it comes to pitching. Imagine the pressure there's going to be on Garrett Cole, on Justin, well, I guess Verlander won't be around by that point, but on Garrett Cole, on like Jacob deGrom, on some of the young guys who are around now to be a part of that next time. All of these guys, these MVPs, these all-stars who are going back to their teams and saying, bro, because that's the only way they address each other, bro, I have not had that much fun playing baseball in a long time. because that's ultimately what it was about. It was fun. It was just so clearly, visibly fun. And it's just, I want more of that. And I think MLB is very smart to hang on to that and be like, hey, this is just fun. Let's just have fun.
I like that. It's a good way of putting a bow on it. Just have fun. And that's what the WBC is.
It's all and that's the thing. It's all the WBC needs to be. Just fun. What more do you want than Mike Trout versus Shohei Ohtani? Seriously.
Guys being dudes. What's better than that?
What is better than that?
The one thing though that kind of leads into, before we get into the NL Central real quick, we do have to mention this because Jose Altuve is going to be gone for at minimum, looks like 2 months now.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess longer. Khaleesi the dog, not a fan. And I wonder to you, John, with the timeline there and where just how top heavy the Astros are at this point, how concerning, not that they'll miss the playoffs, but like, does this jeopardize their ability to be the number one overall seed in the AL with the amount of time he'll be out? And does this open the door kind of for the Mariners to build a solid lead or give him a better odds of winning the division based on his timeline?
It definitely improves their odds. I mean, we have Houston via our playoff odds with a 54.5% chance to win the division, followed by Seattle 18.8, the Angels at 15.1, the Rangers at 11.5, and as proof that nothing is impossible, the A's at 0.1%.
Is that after the injury or is that before the injury?
That is after the injury. Altuve's injury has already been baked into our depth charts. If you look at our depth charts, you'll see he's now projected for only some 450-ish plate appearances, where normally that would have been closer, I think, to 600 or so. I mean, there's no way around it. It hurts Houston, definitely. You know, he's one of their best players at a position that they don't really have a good replacement for, you know, to slot in there. I mean, right now it's, again, if you look at our depth charts, the guy who's going to benefit or probably be used most there is David Hensley, who, amusingly enough, they're going to go from a dude who is like maybe 5'7" to a guy who's 6'6". I really love that. That's going to be great. Mauricio Dubon being the other guy, I think, who will get some playing time there, is more of a utility guy than anything. Obviously, and I don't think, you know, this is no shade to either of those guys. Neither of those guys is Jose Altuve, and the Astros will not expect either of those guys to be Jose Altuve. Ultimately, though, because of the fact that, you know, I think this is different than Diaz, obviously, where he's out for the season and he is such an important piece for the Mets, primarily because he was far and away the best reliever in that bullpen, far and away their best high leverage relief option. Losing that at this point in the season is just killer in so many ways. The Astros, I mean, I think it is easier, particularly because of where they are, that again, they did have that cushion in the division, even with Altuve out. You know, you shave win and a half, 2 wins off their projection because of what Altuve is going to be missing. They're still in a pretty comfortable spot. Does this jeopardize them as the number one team in the American League? Possibly, because, I mean, I think we can all assume that the margin of error between, in particular, the Yankees and the Astros, and then maybe if they take a step forward, a team like Toronto, or, you know, if Tampa goes really nuts, or if Cleveland manages to merge with the White Sox and also the or if the Twins happen to go nuts, whatever it happens to be, you know, it's going to be a thin margin for error, probably close to the top. But at the same time, I think this is an injury Houston can survive, again, and it may sound kind of elementary, but it's true, because it's not season ending. And because it does come at a point where, you know, if they lose, and timing does matter, if they lose Altuve to a broken hand in August, that's going to cost them the playoffs too. That is truly massive, because it's, you know, it's not just what does that do to the Astros in the regular season, but what does it do to have that lineup shortened at the most important time possible. Here, they're still going to get Altuve back probably sometime before the All-Star break, assuming that there's no lingering issues with the injury, which I guess that's the other, you know, the known unknown is that hand injuries do tend to have a disproportionate effect on hitting ability, depending on how long it takes to, you know, get all the feeling back and everything, and get everything back to normal. But, you know, he'll have the entire second half of the season kind of to get himself ramped up. And again, the most important thing is, assuming Houston does make the playoffs, and barring a complete collapse, Houston will make the playoffs, that he is there in time for that. So I think the Astros overall will be okay. Obviously, that is, you know, they did not want this. I think that, like, again, the nightmare for every MLB team heading into the WBC was, what if this happens? And at the very least, I think Houston avoided the worst case scenario. And I think it also helps that, you know, that roster is deep and good enough that I think they'd have to lose. I think they would have had to lose more than Altuve before you really start worrying about, okay, but is this going to cost them the division?
That's fair. but it is something to monitor. And
it is, and I think it also, as with injuries generally, it also just reduces the margin of error in terms of now you really can't afford other guys getting hurt.
Yeah,
you the pillow, the cushion you have to absorb an injury like that, it's not more than like 2 guys at a time, really. Unless
I wonder if Dana Brown calls the Braves and they're like, "Hey, Brendan Shoemaker's kind of blocked, and it's clear that he's not going to be your everyday second baseman, and he's going to start off at second base in AAA."
Boy,
this year with Vaughn, it's short. So
just quickly looking, and I know we texted about this, looking at the replies that Mark Bowman and David O'Brien got when they announced Orlando Arcia as the starting shortstop, and just the fury among Braves fans that it wasn't Vaughn Grissom or that it wasn't going to be Braden Shoemaker. Boy, like it's nice to get some, especially amidst all the WBC stuff, to turn back to spring training and be like, oh, an old-fashioned spring training position battle snap, like foo-for-all or dust-up or whatever we want to call it. Like, it's nice to see people getting mad about that stuff again, because for so long, spring training, aside from the shittiest, cheapest teams, most teams come into spring training with like maybe 2 or 3 spots on the roster up for grabs. Most contending teams are set top to bottom. Yeah. It's only teams like Oakland or Cincinnati or Washington where you're like, oh, well, there's an actual position battle here, but it's a position battle between bad and also bad. Like, it doesn't really matter who wins this. The only people who are going to care about this are like people in like one league only fantasy leagues or something. But
that's with dedication, man. I know people who are in their AL or NL only leagues.
They are the true sickos, man. My hat's off to them. I can't do it. My hat is off to them. But something like the Braves, like the Braves actually having an open position battle for arguably the most important position in the infield and one of the most important positions on the roster, we don't get that much anymore. And for it to end up being Orlando Arcia too is just the icing on that particular cake, that's who they ended up going with, which I understand that is a stopgap. Orlando Arcia is not going to be the starting shortstop for the Atlanta Braves by August 1st, if not like June 1st. There will be a change at some point during the season for them. I'm confident of that. But it is still nice to be able to get that rage, to get that fury and be like, oh yeah, like this was a thing that like Braves fans were like, this matters. Like this actually will have like big league impact. It's not just who's the last guy in our bullpen. It's who's the dude who's going to be like getting like 60% of the ground balls hit to him on a regular basis.
Thanks, John.
Look, I wasn't trying to make you feel worse about Arcia, if only because I knew you were already going to make yourself feel really bad about Arcia, because that is
I just knew Elvis Andrus should have been a Brave. That's all I'm saying. It's like I knew that signing should have happened a month and a half ago. Like that was just sitting out there. I talked about it on the podcast. I was like, I mean, even if you're pretty high on what Vaughn can still be or whatever, just sign Elvis Andrus as the stopgap. I do not want to walk into a situation with Orlando Arcia. Like it's just Arcia, he'll be fine, but like, good God. Like the bottom of the order is going to be a little troublesome here.
Yeah,
for the Braves.
and I think that's where when you're a team like Atlanta, you can take, you kind of know in the back of your mind, look, is this the ideal to have Orlando Arcia as your starting shortstop, and is this the ideal to have him and whoever else is going to be in the bottom of that lineup together?
Well, it's going to be Eddie Rosario. It's going to be Marcell Ozuna. It's going to be
Boy, watching the WBC, I was reminded that Eddie Rosario has never hit a fly ball that he didn't think was 35 rows deep into the right field seats. Like, I love that man and his just all-out confidence that he is the best hitter on the planet.
He needs that, man.
He needs it. Some guys just need it, and Eddie Rosario is clearly one of those dudes.
And also paid off for him a little bit. He has a ring.
He does have a ring. I mean, he was the best player on the field for like 2 weeks in October.
That
randomly.
is true. Without Eddie Rosario, the Braves do not have a World Series ring.
Which is really weird to think about, but I think similarly, Atlanta kind of understands too. It's like, hey, like the division is going to be tough. This is not a cakewalk by any stretch of the imagination, but we do have a little room here to kind of see how this goes, to give Vaughn Grissom the time down in AAA to work at shortstop away from, where the errors don't kill us, where they're not going to be the difference between a win or a loss.
Hold on. Have you not been to a Stripers game in Gwinnett County, Jon Tayler? It's do or die, man. What?
No, go ahead. Sorry. I was about to say, aren't the Braves also in Gwinnett, but they're in Cobb.
They are in Cobb, yes. I grew up in Gwinnett, so where the Stripers are, back when they were the Gwinnett Braves,
okay.
They started off, and then they wanted to switch things up. But
so, look, I understand it from the Braves' point of view that it's like, look, batting Orlando Arcia ninth and starting him at shortstop for like 8 weeks or whatever is not going to kill us. I think the problem becomes if Grissom down in AAA really is not taking to shortstop, and you don't feel confident about handing the job to Shoemaker if you figure, well, he's about the same defender Arcia is, but probably a worse hitter because he's, he's not an established MLB player. Then the question becomes, well, what do we do now? And I think, we've talked a little about that, about what the Braves could potentially do at shortstop if none of these options work out. But, it's obviously different between just spitballing ideas in March and, having the trade deadline roll around and go, we really can't live with this much longer. Like, these games are too important for us to be starting literally Orlando Arcia.
But we'll see. We'll see how. That's why they play the game, Jon Tayler, is what they say. That's why these games.
Rob Manfred says that all the time.
That's true. NL Central, John. The case for the Chicago Cubs to win the NL Central this year is what? What has to happen for them?
When I was talking about the Red Sox and I was like, think about how many hypotheticals have to work just for this team to be in a contending position. That's
not contending though. Just winning the NL Central, and don't forget.
I like how there's a difference between those two.
You're not contending. No one in the NL Central is contending for anything. That is a totally different thing. They're basically playing glorified AAA. Like NL Central is just AAA baseball.
It in a large way it is. So I think for starters, they need to get the young pitching that they've started to develop needs to shine through, and that's got to be guys like Justin Steele and Hayden Wisniewski. And maybe Keegan Thompson, although he's pegged for a long relief role right now. And then the guys further down in that system who are still developing, like Javier Assad, who was great with Team Mexico in the World Baseball Classic, Caleb Killian, Ben Brown, maybe. Most of the thing, and I think I've mentioned this a few times before with the Cubs, most of what looks like their good prospect base, led by guys like Pete Crow Armstrong and not Brennan Davis, but Kevin Alcantara, James Triantos, Owen Casey. Speaking of the WBC, a dude who balled out for Canada. That future is still a couple years away. And I think what you see with the Cubs roster now is a team that is like, you know what? We're not going to be good. We're going to be okay. And there is some upside here. There is the upside of, okay, if Cody Bellinger rediscovers his stroke, and if Trey Mancini can forget whatever it is that happened in Houston, and also if we can somehow attach a second player to him to play right field at the same time, and if Dansby Swanson wasn't a mirage somehow and he can actually maintain the offense he's developed, and if Nico Horner keeps developing, and if we actually get anything out of Nick Madrigal, and if Marcus again, there are so many ifs that have to come together for this team to be in position to win the NL Central because there are so many outstanding weaknesses. There is no top of the rotation guy here. Not really. Not unless you are way higher on Stroman or Jameson Taillon than you have any right to be. The lineup is incredibly variable and with a lot of weak spots. Like Eric Hosmer is the starting first baseman for this team right now. That shouldn't happen. That shouldn't be the case for a contending team. Patrick Wisdom should not be a starter on a contending team. Edwin Rios should not be a starter on a contending team. Like, there are, and then the bullpen in particular is just kind of a mess. Like, I don't know that I would trust any of these guys with any kind of substantial lead, with the possible exception of Michael Fulmer. But again, not a guy who really, very far from what he was back in his AL Rookie of the Year days. Like, this is a team that just doesn't have a ton of upside, where it feels like the best you're probably going to get out of this crew is like 78 to 80 wins, I would guess. So for me, again, I think what would make the Cubs a realistic NL Central contender is that youth movement has to start blossoming sooner than expected and has to come up like guns blazing. It really is something like Wisniewski and Steele and Thompson just coalesce into a fantastic trio of young pitching, or it's something like Pete Crow Armstrong demolishes Double-A over 2.5 months and gets called up and does the same to the majors. But that is just so hard to project and predict because you are dealing with guys with no major league track record where you can't really say confidently one way or another what they're going to do. And I think the other problem is, again, the guys who are on this roster who you can confidently project and predict, not really guys who it feels like have much of a ceiling left anymore, where it's like even a guy like Bellinger, where it's like he's defensively good enough to be at least like a 3-win player in center field, and he's a great base runner. But what are the odds at this point after multiple years where he just has not looked like anything more than a league average hitter that's suddenly going to undo itself, or that Eric Hosmer at age 33, I believe he is. Yeah, 33 is going to find a new second gear. That's just so unlikely to me. Or that Stroman is somehow going to find another tier to reach when he's not a big strikeout guy and he is so reliant on balls in play. Like, I just think there's too much top end talent missing from this Cubs team, and that top end talent is still developing in the minors right now. Or I think that's their hope anyway.
I think there's a path. Like if I had to do a rankings of like most like things that would not surprise me in Major League Baseball this year, the Cubs having everything go right and then winning 86-ish games and winning the NL Central would be one of those things that would not surprise me.
I think this is where you and I disagree, though, because I think winning the NL Central is going to take at least 90 games.
Do you think so?
Because I think the Cardinals are pretty much a 90-win team.
What did they win last year?
The Cardinals won, I think, 92 games last year.
Okay.
I want to say off the top of my head.
93. Close. There you go.
So, and I'd like, for as much as I think we talked about the Cardinals offseason wise, is they didn't really do all that much. You know, because the Cardinals never really do all that much in any given offseason, with the exception, obviously, Wilson Contreras. You know, they don't feel like a team that's suddenly going to drop 6 or 7 wins, barring a huge run of injuries or something like that. Or, you know, if you knock Nolan Arenado out for the season, yeah, then I think we start talking about, okay, the threshold for winning the NL Central is probably like 90 games. But I think, or at the minimum,
24 home runs for the Cardinals last year.
Who did?
Pujols ended up with 24 homers last year for the
one
Cardinals.
of the all-time great final seasons. You gotta hand it to Big Al on the way out the door.
I would have never said 24, John. Like I would have not been anywhere close to 24 for Pujols last year.
It also says a lot about how sometimes you can just kind of dumbass your way into 24 home runs. Like that is a number that just doesn't really mean anything anymore.
Yes.
Like imagine going back to 1985 and telling someone, "Hey, this dude's gonna hit 24 home runs as a 41-year-old or whatever in his last season in baseball." That's not even gonna be like halfway to the league leader.
Jose Iglesias is going to do it in like 7 years.
Yeah. I think like, yeah, and just looking at the Cardinals roster too now, like, yeah, there are some spots here where you're a little concerned. Like that rotation.
Well, hold on, let's do that. Yeah, let's do the Cardinals. Okay. So the case for the Cardinals going back to back and winning the NL Central, John.
I think it's just the fact that they are returning the great majority of a team that won the NL Central last year, and that even though there are some potential problem areas, like, you know, the outfield concerns me. I like Lars Nootbaar a lot. I think I really like his approach. I think he was another guy you saw for Team Japan who just had a very good World Baseball Classic for them. But I think the kind of backward steps that Tyler O'Neill and Dylan Carlson have taken make you worry a little bit. The rotation, I wouldn't want to be relying on a soon-to-be 42-year-old Adam Wainwright, but that's what the Cardinals are going to do. I think a lot of what goes right in the rotation has to be Jack Flaherty comes back, not just healthy, but looking like his second half of 2019 self, or was it 2021? Whichever second half it was, where he was just unhittable, essentially. That's what's going to be what needs to happen, because I think in a lot of ways you're seeing a lot of those young Cardinals guys, they're not really hitting the projection some people expected. O'Neill, Carlson, obviously Paul DeJong, who is more or less flamed out in St. Louis at this point. But on the other hand, you know, they have younger guys like Juan Yepez and Nolan Gorman, and I think obviously the big X factor for St. Louis is Jordan Walker, their top prospect, who has lit up spring training. Who I think, you know, I don't think that St. Louis is going to be slow to move him if he's demolishing Double-A baseball, and you know they have O'Neill or Carlson or Nootbaar or Yepez or whoever it is or Gorman struggling badly. So I think the case for St. Louis is, you know, they've got the majority of that roster back. It is a pretty solid roster top to bottom. And they do have a guy like Walker theoretically at least, ready to step in from the minor leagues, who can be that kind of impact second half prospect guy, I think. I imagine that is probably how the Cardinals are looking at him, is let him get a full, you know, half of baseball in the minors again, and then show that he can come up and do the work. Otherwise, you know, I think, like I said, the thing that it worries me about St. Louis is there is not that top of the rotation talent unless Flaherty is healthy. And I think, too, that, you know, this is a team where depth-wise right now, there's not a whole lot really going for them, particularly if they do get an injury. And granted, this is the case for all teams. If they get an injury to one of their top guys, to Goldschmidt, to Arenado, to Edman, like, those are not injuries that they're going to be able to suffer easily. So that's why I think, you know, again, I still think that the threshold for winning the NL Central is 90 wins, because I think this Cardinals team is pretty much a 90-win team, give or take. But, you know, there's not that much room before that starts sinking into the mid-80s, you know? And I think, you know, I think that's possible, but I think it will take injuries more than anything, because I don't really see where the collective underperformance on St. Louis comes from, with the exception of the rotation, that makes them that much more vulnerable in the Central, especially when you consider that Milwaukee, I think, took a step back this offseason, that the Cubs haven't really taken that big step forward, and that Cincinnati and Pittsburgh are just whatever they happen to be right now.
I wonder if they take another big swing. If St. Louis thinks that, like, hey, we're playing at a 98 win pace, and they take one more win now swing this summer. I wonder who makes sense. I wonder
Just,
if they would
but
do
it never happens with them. We've seen it deadline after deadline. The Cardinals just do not operate that way for whatever reason, be it, a commitment to the wholesome Midwestern values of
Best fans in baseball, John.
Of loyalty and whatnot, or if it's just they're too cheap. But that's just not. I mean, that if anything, you could have made the argument that the Cardinals should have done that last year. Like, were they a 98 win team last year? No, but they very clearly, the Central was theirs. They were going to get the automatic playoff spot and host the wild card team in the first round, and they just didn't do it. And Philadelphia made pretty quick work of them in the process. So, granted, it took a crazy ninth inning rally, but that's the stuff that playoff runs are made out of. I just do wonder if that is kind of the missing ingredient for St. Louis, and one that they're just not capable of supplying. Is that like they do need that kind of guy that puts them over the top, and they just never seem to make that move for him. I mean, I think you can argue that maybe that's Wilson Contreras, but I think for as good of a hitter Contreras is, one, he's over 30, and the history of catchers over the age of 30 and their particular declines, not a fun one. Two, he is not a good defender at catcher. He just straight up is not. And especially I think that's going to be weird for Cardinals fans who were so used to watching Yadi Molina just be defensively great for years and years and years, to go to a guy in Contreras who just doesn't really stand out positively in any aspect catching, except for his arm. He has a fantastic arm, obviously. But
do you think we ever get to a point where baseball, they should have like a DH for catchers? Where you have
it feels like we should be at that point already,
right? Like, it just seems like so many of these catchers are just terrible.
Like, let's just there's a catching catcher and a hitting catcher. I mean, I do wonder what of that will change once the automatic balls and strike system really comes into play. But obviously, that's not going to happen this year. And
you're out of here, Jeff Mathis.
R.I.P. Jeff Mathis. Not actual R.I.P. I figure most people don't keep up on Jeff Mathis, and he's still alive. He's still kicking somewhere. I'm sure.
Just not hitting the ball really.
Just not. I mean, he was never hitting the ball.
No. Who was the worst hitting catcher of all time? Like, who got a lot of at bats? Like, not just anybody, but like.
Oh, that's a long list of guys like that.
Who's the most recent one where it's like this guy? It was just.
Kevin Cash.
Oh, that's a good one.
Kevin Cash just could not hit. Just could not hit at all. And there are guys like that in the league right now. I mean, Austin Hedges is one of the better defensive catchers in baseball. Yeah. Sometimes he goes up there and I'm like, you might be better off just not having a bat. Have you tried it? Like, it doesn't seem like the bat's doing you any good. You might as well try something different.
Try and get hit.
Yeah, just lean into everything, Just see if a guy can just pipe 3 straight. Like, you never know. But I think that's going to be interesting for Cardinals fans, is the adjustment to Contreras. Although I did love that Contreras was so open both during the offseason and after signing with St. Louis. He's like, I really wanted to be here. I could just tell how much fun it was to be here. Just imagine every Cubs fan hearing those comments going, what the shit, dude? You literally won a World Series here. No sympathy for the Cubs, ever.
I love that. John, the last team that's pseudo-trying, and then we'll do a brief just synopsis of the Pirates and Reds offseason. The Brewers, who also... we should say, because it's the NL Central and the Brewers are weird, could absolutely win this division.
Absolutely.
And nothing would surprise me with this team, but what's the case for the Brewers winning this division this year?
Cy Young caliber seasons from both Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff for starters. They need both of those guys healthy, throwing 200 plus innings. Yes,
check
that
those
is
2 things. That's a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, they got 196 out of Burns, 169 out of Woodruff last year. There's no reason they both can't hit 200 if they both stay healthy. They need, and feels like the 9th year in a row we're saying they need Christian Yelich to be. Well, look, at this point, it's almost like they need Christian Yelich to be the old Christian Yelich. I don't know if the old Christian Yelich is still there anymore. And I think that's kind of one of those things when you look at the Brewers roster, you're like, a lot of these guys, they're like as similar to the Cubs, but I think with the difference that the Brewers have much better pitching, you're asking a lot of guys to hit ceilings that may not be there, because you're betting on things like, okay, Jesse Winker is going to bounce back from the worst season of his life. And not just the worst season of his life, but also a season where, it seemed like every Mariners player is willing to run up to a Mariners beat writer and be like, yo, this Winker dude just doesn't care for some reason. Like, his reputation coming out of that 1 year in Seattle is in the trash can. And I think that's going to be really interesting to watch how that plays out. You're betting on William Contreras being the 130-something WRC plus bat he was with Atlanta, and not the guy who's with the super inflated BABIP. It's always fun to say that word out loud. Batting average on balls in play.
I think the hitting's going to always be there for him.
But you're also betting that that you're catching that you can turn him into a viable defensive catcher.
Which they've done. They're really
they've
good
done
at that.
Like, granted, but Milwaukee is very good at that. But there's also that is an outstanding if you're betting on Luis Urias hitting some portion of his ceiling. You're betting on an outfield of Garrett Mitchell and Brian. Why is Brian Anderson starting in right field? When did that happen? That is I think the first time I've looked at one of these team rosters and gone, I have no recollection of that and no idea also why the team is trying it. But you're betting on Brian Anderson and Garrett Mitchell and guys like that to be better than league average. You're betting on Bryce Terang being able to make that jump right away into prospectum after Keston Hiura just flamed out completely. I think Milwaukee reminds me a lot of the Rays in some regards, both with how they construct the roster and the fact that they don't spend money on their roster. And I think the obvious upside of that is you can build a team that is super complementary in different ways and that works together. The downside is if you're not spending a lot of money on this team, you are hoping to paper over some holes with some pretty meager solutions. And that is definitely the case in multiple places with the Brewers. And I think you saw it last year too, just dealing away Josh Hader, not because it made the team better, because it was really hard to argue that was the case, but because he was going to get way more expensive the next year and then be a free agent after that. And clearly Milwaukee had already decided, nah, that's not a guy that we're going to try to hammer out a long-term deal with. You can debate whether or not that was a smart strategy, and certainly if you have a guy like Devin Williams ready to step in his place, hey, that's fine. Yeah. But again, like you look at that bullpen, and it's these isn't a bad bullpen, but Matt Bush, Hobie Milner, Javi Guerra, former Braves standout Bryce Wilson, Joel Payamps, like these are not marquee names. And while you wouldn't expect the Brewers to have a bullpen of all-stars top to bottom, again, you're relying on a lot of lesser dudes who don't necessarily have the juice you would expect for a division-winning team. So I think something similar to Chicago, where it's you need a lot of guys to hit their ceilings, and I think equally similar to Chicago, and I don't expect to see it so much, but those top prospects need to make an impact. And I think more likely than not, beyond Terang and to a certain degree Mitchell, you're looking at guys like Sal Frelick and Joey Wiemer, and if things go incredibly well for him at Double-A again, Jackson Churio, their top prospect overall. I think, those are the kinds of guys that Milwaukee will be betting on just because that is where the impact is going to have to come from them, because they are just not spending the money to get those impact players otherwise. My girlfriend's dog has many thoughts about the Brewers, apparently.
I just love that both of our dogs are just losing their minds while we're doing this podcast.
What are you crying about, little guy? Do you want to talk about the Brewers? Do you have thoughts about Milwaukee's outfield? What do you think about Sal Frelick? He's a Boston College product. Go Eagles. Anyway,
I love that you knew that Boston College Eagles. I was not expecting you to know the Eagles.
Briefly, in part because my mom went there for graduate school, and since my parents didn't go to American college, that was pretty much my college team as a teen, because I just didn't have anything else. So there's a brief chunk of time of Boston College basketball where I'm like, yeah, man, Troy Bell was the shit. I had those dreams that Troy Bell was going to be like an NBA All-Star, and then it turned out he was just an undersized shooting guard with no handle. So
it was all about like Jared Dudley, and you were like, oh,
yeah, man. Sean Williams for the 10 minutes on the court where he was capable and not too high to play. Like, great times at BC under convicted felon Al Skinner. Actually, should I say that? Because I'm worried that I've libeled Al Skinner.
Is he?
Who is now coaching at Kennesaw State? Last coached at Kennesaw State.
I was gonna say not currently, because the current coach just made the tournament.
Wasn't Al involved in that? No, I'm confusing him with whoever it was involved in that point shaving scandal at Boston College. So my apologies to Al Skinner, and my apologies as well to your newest advertiser, the Kennesaw University. What even is? I just botched that so badly.
I'll give you Kennesaw. A hint.
Yes.
Oh.
No. What is the hint?
Oh, the hint is me holding up the actual mascot.
Oh, okay. What is that? An owl?
That is an owl.
Okay.
The light over here is really not doing it. Like the ring light is not allowing it to do what it. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's an owl.
It is an owl though, and also I was completely wrong on that point shaving scandal. That was back in like 78, 79. So. Again, my apologies to Al Skinner, who I know listens to this podcast on a regular basis. Al, if you'd like to come on and talk.
Apologies.
But yeah,
I want an email from Al Skinner tomorrow. Like, what What did I deserve? What did I do to deserve that?
Hey,
Why did I
you
just
think,
get?
Do you think they ever tried to brand him as Owl Skinner when he was at Kennesaw?
Oh, that's a good one.
That was right there.
That.
Kennesaw, travel back in time and then come get me and then travel with me back in time so we can do that one. While Al Skinner was the head coach there.
I love that. Because both of our dogs are just losing their minds, John, let's end on this. 30 seconds on anything positive about the Reds and Pirates.
The Pirates will have some cool young players like O'Neal Cruz, and I think if you're a Pirates fan, good views, it's a great stadium. If you're a Pirates fan, you just kind of have to accept that the best you're going to get out of this franchise is like the first few years of a cool young guy's career. So if you can make your peace with that, you're going to have a good time. With the Reds, they're going to have Skyline Chili nachos at the ballpark this season. And while I still think Skyline Chili is one of the worst things I've ever put in my mouth,
not a sponsor,
I can see how that would probably work better in nacho form than it did in the abominable hot dog form I chose to consume it. Really cannot recommend that one. Otherwise for the Reds, Hunter Green is going to be really cool, I think.
He's opening day, right?
Yeah, I mean, also one of those things where it's like, if not him, who the hell else at this point? And also, if you're a Reds fan,
like, do they have their older arm they were going to give it to, or they were thinking about giving it to?
I don't think there are any older guys left on that roster at this point. Like, the Reds are one of those tanking teams that has reached the point where there's just literally nothing left to trade, and so you're just kind of stuck with whatever you got. Like, maybe a guy like Kurt Casale or what's his name? Will Myers. Maybe a guy like that gets dealt some point mid-season for something. Or maybe they do Joey Votto a solid, and if he agrees to waive a no trade or whatever, they're like, look, we'll send you to a contending team and you can just finish it out there. But otherwise, I mean, the rotation for this team right now, Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Graham Ashcraft, somehow Luis Sessa, and ex-Mariners prospect Brandon Williamson, who was part of the Winker trade. That's not a bad group of young guys, but that's also not a group of guys that you should really think like that. That's a group that's going to take its lumps this season, and that's true for Cincinnati as a whole. This is a roster built with no real care and no real attention because the primary purpose of this roster existing the way it is to save the Castellini family money. That, like, start to finish, that's what it is. And I think in that sense, like, similarly with the Pirates, you kind of have to accept going in that, barring an ownership change, these guys just don't care about the product on the field as much as they care about how much it costs them. So that's a bleak note to end on. But hey,
I just realized I was going through their full lineup. And I'm like, I remember when I went to a Chattanooga Lookouts game last year. I was like, I've seen these guys.
I think a team like the Lookout should just be constantly branding itself as the Reds of tomorrow, today, and also the Reds of yesterday, today. It's kind of grim, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it is. Man, this is a rough. Also, apologies to Joey Votto, who I had just written off as retired. Like, that's one of those guys where I just thought after last year where I'm like, he's not getting traded. It felt kind of like the swan song with his interviews and everything that he was doing, where I was like,
yeah, I get that.
He's back. I thought Joey Votto just dipped out. Like, I thought he was just like, I don't want to play for another team or do the whole contingent thing. But
he's definitely a dude I could see just being the one to just I think Zach Greinke, although Zach Greinke is not in the similar position, but just being like, you know what, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore.
That's
Bye.
what I thought. He was just going to dip. I didn't think he'd make it a big deal just based on his interviews and his personality. He seems like a really likable, just down to earth dude.
Yeah, very. I've only interviewed him once or twice, but very much he earns the reputation he has of being a thoughtful, considerate, and just generally smart dude. But
he turns 40 this year.
He does, and this is his last year under contract. He's got an option
so
for
this
24.
Has gotta be it.
I would guess so, and that's why I say I wouldn't be surprised if the Reds approach him near close to the trade deadline and are like, "Look, we're not winning anything. If you agree to move, we'll trade you somewhere. We won't even really ask for anything back." But to give you the chance to go out with a contending team to try to win a World Series. I would like to see that happen. I know it would suck for Reds fans because that guy is and has been Reds baseball for the entirety of his career. But, I have that soft spot in my heart for the veterans. And I think Miggy Cabrera, where also I cannot imagine him not being a Detroit Tiger, but I have that hope in my heart that it's like, let Miggy go to a World Series contending team and let's see if we can get him to go out with another ring, Yeah. Let's see if we can get Joey Votto out with a ring. I didn't necessarily feel that way with Pujols because he'd already come home and he'd already won a World Series. So it's like, what, this is enough on its own for him to come home and do this.
Yeah.
But for a guy like Votto, who's just going to be spending the majority of the season hitting in front of mostly empty ballparks for at best a 70-win team, I think he deserves a better way out. And I feel similarly about Cabrera, even though again, Miggy has his ring, he has his future Hall of Fame plaque, already, they're already chiseling it up or however they do it in Cooperstown. Like, but it's nice to see those guys get a chance to win at the end.
He had 36 home runs in 2021. And
Votto had a
90
great year that year.
RBIs. How do you have almost 40 dingers and not even 100 RBIs? I feel like that's almost impossible.
Boy, doesn't that say something about how the Reds chose to build their roster? Doesn't it?
Like, I was looking at that, and I'm like, I don't even know how you do that. I think that's all, like, next to impossible to not have 100 RBIs when you hit 36 dingers.
Yeah,
God.
It really says a lot.
No one's ever on base when Joey Votto does anything good. Well, that's probably going to be the case again this year. Jon Tayler, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at Fangraphs.com this week?
So this week we are running the 2023 edition of our positional power rankings, where we go through every position in the league and rank them by team 1 through 30 from most projected WAR to least, taking into account everyone projected to get playing time at the particular position. We just wrapped up the infield today being Wednesday with shortstop and third base. We have all 3 outfield positions left, plus all the starting pitchers and relievers. So go check those out if you haven't already. Get yourself caught up. Get ready for the ones that are still to come. Other than that, we are just, basically we are watching the clock until opening day, which is now just 10 days away. We are 10 days away from opening day, April 1st.
That's
if
wild.
I've done math correctly, which I don't always do correctly. But, we're just keeping up with the news. Obviously, we're done with the WBC. We have a few pieces up there about the WBC itself if you'd like to read some more from me in particular, but also from Michael Bauman, Ben Clemens, other folks who weighed in on the WBC. Either way, check out fangraphs.com. Come on over, sign up for a membership, $60 a year, $5 a month for ad-free browsing, plus some other goodies that are coming down the pike. And then stick around for opening day. We're going to have our season predictions. We're going to have all our stuff. We're going to have a big opening day chat with our writers, so get ready for that. Fangraphs.com. You can't spell baseball with at least a few of the letters in Fangraphs, mostly the A and the S, and that's actually it. The rest of the letters in Fangraphs do not go into baseball, but Fangraphs.com, baseball.
I love that. Natural ad man, Jon Tayler.
I need that video of George H.W. Bush from that Astros World Series just lifting the baseball. And just that needs to be the Fangraphs logo is HW holding the baseball up, and that's just it.
That gif always cracks me up.
Yeah, I feel bad laughing at it sometimes because he's so visibly old and infirm.
But it's just so funny.
Just the way he's just sitting there, and all of a sudden it's just
no, but it's just you just don't see it coming, and you know it's coming every time. Where he's just like looking, and then it's just like.
I think that my favorite is the one where some genius on Twitter overlaid the opening chords of "Today" by the Smashing Pumpkins on top of it. It's practically poetry. It's one of the best things I've ever seen. But my apologies to your new sponsor, by the way, the Bush family.
Skinner family, the Bush family.
We're nailing all the criminals today. I know I should really stop saying how Skinner is a
criminal. You gotta stop doing that, Jon. Oh my God.
We're gonna get sued.
All right. Well, not you, Jon. It's me getting sued.
Okay, well then look, then as long as I'm just a limited liability partner in all of this,
then just fire away, Jon Tayler.
Yeah, I can live with being an accessory and not the main person in this.
Well, good to know that 4 years into the pod, Jon.
Just remember, defamation is really hard to prove in the United States. Like, it is defamation, libel, slander, very hard to prove, and with good reason.
There you go. Jon Tayler, thank you as always, and I'll talk to you next week.
Hooray.